Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel for another video where today we're going to be talking books once again. I get requests for a video like this all the time, so here we have my top 10 favourite psychological thriller slash mystery thriller slash suspense slash crime fiction kind of books I highly recommend you read. It's a wide genre. I read a lot of this type of book, so if it's one that I'm mentioning in this video, then this is really a 1 in a million book that's stuck in my head. I love a book with an element of suspense, something that keeps me on the edge of my seat with a really good twist. I'm not a romance novel kind of gal. So without further ado, in no particular order, here are 10 books I highly recommend you read. Spoiler free, of course. Mainly because I read most of these so long ago that I actually can't remember the intricate details of the plot, but believe me when I say they're all very, very good. Although saying that, I read this one very, very recently, last week in fact, so this one is very fresh in my mind. This is Written in Blood by Chris Carter. Now this mention is sponsored, but please don't let that think that has any sway on the glowing review this is about to get, because you know I'll only agree to a book sponsorship if I read and love the book. Same goes for any sponsorship I do actually, but I just know you guys will love this as much as I did. Written in Blood by Chris Carter is a dark and gruesome serial killer, police procedural kind of novel based around a man called Robert Hunter, who's a detective with the LAPD's ultra-violent crimes unit. I think this is actually the 11th in the Robert Hunter series, but please don't let that put you off. There's no previous context needed to get into this book. I personally haven't read any of the other 10 books come before this, and I wasn't lost or confused at all. You don't need any sort of like context for this. The story begins with a young woman called Angela who's a pickpocket in LA, and she ends up stealing a bag from the wrong man. Inside the bag there's nothing but a leather-bound journal which depicts a number of gruesome crimes. The man, whoever he was, has written in detail about all these murders that he's committed, including details about where he buried the bodies, how he killed them, who these people were. Angela sends the book to the police, of course, and the hunt is on for the killer. Only, of course, the killer is also hunting Angela. I think any more information than that will constitute a spoiler, so I'll leave it there. But the storytelling in this book keeps you on the edge of your seat. There's no huge twists or turns, which is quite unusual for this kind of genre. The story just sort of slowly unravels and you're on the edge of your seat beginning to end. And also, I love the fact there's no sort of long, drawn-out introduction to the storyline and the characters. It just dives straight into the story, and I was hooked by the end of the first chapter. I read this so quickly, like it's quite a chunky one, and I read it in like a couple of days. Also, it has a rating of 4.53 stars on Goodreads, which is high praise because I don't think I've ever seen a rating that high. The second book I don't have to show you, but it's The Killing Lessons by Saul Black. Now this is the book I recommend if anybody asks me for a thriller book. According to Goodreads, I actually read this back in August 2016 and it's still like the one that I recommend all the time. I think about it constantly. And I didn't actually realise this, but Goodreads also tells me that it's the first in the Valerie Hart series, so now I'm going to search down the other 2 books in the series because I need to read them. The Killing Lessons is definitely a police procedural book with a serial killer storyline, very similar to Written in Blood. It's super engaging and it's actually a really frightening read, probably the scariest out of all the books I have for you today. I don't get scared very easily, but I remember having to put this one down at points for a breather. The story opens with 2 strangers turning up an isolated country house and they murder a mother in front of her 10-year-old daughter. Homicide detective Valerie Hart is put on the case and she follows a trail of victims who are all abducted, tortured and left with seemingly random objects inside of them. And the key to the answer is held by a 10-year-old girl who witnessed her mother being murdered. I remember reading this so clearly because I just thought it was so well written. I often find with police procedurals you're taken away from the main storyline with sidelines about the lead character, and you do of course have the side storyline here about Valerie, but I find it sort of adds to the story rather than detracts from it. It's just a really fantastic book. I recommend it to everyone and I'm recommending it to you. The next one is Enny Meeny by MJ Arledge, which is another police procedural and another one that sticks out in my mind for very similar reasons to The Killing Lessons. It's very intense, very gory, disturbing, dark, twisted. I don't know what that says about me that I really enjoy that in a book. Perhaps I'm a bit desensitized, but it's so good. This one focuses in on Detective Inspector Helen Grace, who herself has a very dark past. Now I've actually read quite a few books in the Helen Grace series, so I can't remember how much you find out about her dark past in this book, but I would actually recommend everything in this series if this one takes your fancy. Enny Meeny's just the one that really sticks out in my head as being like fantastic. So in Enny Meeny, the detectives are called in to investigate when a series of couples are abducted and they're basically given impossible choices in order to gain their freedom. It's all about like these disturbing mind games, think very similar to Saw. One quote from the book is, "On the floor by the phone you'll find a gun. It has one bullet in it, for Sam or for yourself. That is the price of your freedom. You must kill to live. Do you want to live, Amy?" Which I think sums up the plot of this book super well. It's very, very twisty. If I remember correctly, this was a hella thick book that I tore through in just a couple of days. I couldn't put it down. I thought it was fantastic. You just want to get to the end and find out like who it was and what happened. The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. Now this is one I actually read very recently, so I can actually remember the details of this plot. This is your very typical friendship group go to a cabin in the woods and something bad happens kind of book. In the case of this story, one of the members of the friendship group is found dead. You don't actually know who is dead until quite far into the book. You just know that someone is dead, and you're also trying to figure out which of the party killed this person. It's one of those books where each chapter is written from the perspective of a different character. It does take a while to get used to the different voices of each character, but you do get into the swing of it eventually. This book is a bit of a Marmite book. People either love it or hate it, but personally I just absolutely loved it. I saw someone on Goodreads, sorry I spend so much time just like reading reviews on Goodreads, it's a big hobby of mine. Someone described it as an Agatha Christie-like novel, but for modern times, and I have to say I very much agree with that review. It's like very classic, but refreshed. It's the kind of story that you've read a million times before, but it brings something very fresh to the genre. I would highly recommend. One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. Hands up if you're sick of me talking about this book. Yeah, I feel like I mention it in every book video ever, but I'm not going to shut up about it because it's really bloody good. For full disclosure, this was part of a sponsorship that I did last year, but obviously I'm not being sponsored to talk about it in this video at all. I just think it's fantastic. This is a mystery novel aimed towards YA readers, but even as a non-young adult, I really enjoyed it. I just think it's a really good book to introduce anyone new to the genre. I mean, you choose the wrong thriller book to dive in with and you'll be scarred for life, so it's just like an easy sort of like introduction to it. This book is described as The Breakfast Club meets Pretty Little Liars. 5 high schoolers basically go to detention after school for misdemeanors they're sure they didn't commit, and only 4 of them walk out alive. Each teenager is from a different social group, they're all very fundamentally different people, yet they all team up to figure out what on earth happened, because of course they're all suspects, and as the title would suggest, one of them is lying. I actually think this book would make a fantastic movie, maybe like a straight to Netflix kind of thing, so if somebody can get on that I would really like that. And also don't just dismiss this because it's a YA book, it's so well written, the storyline unravels so nicely, and I literally read this, sat on a beanbag in my living room in about 4 hours, so I just couldn't put it down. The Dark Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. Now in all honesty, I had completely forgotten about this book until I loaned it to a friend and she loved it, and her raving about it reminds me of how much I loved it too. This is very much another cabin in a woods style book. I mean, do I have a type? Clearly. Nora, the main protagonist, is invited to a hen party of someone she hasn't seen in literally years. She's not even invited to the wedding, just the hen party. So she contacts another old friend who's also been invited and they make a pact to go together. Again, it's a book with a cast of characters who all have very little in common. They all have very different stories, different backgrounds. They all know the bride from different worlds. None of them know each other. And as you read, you've got to sort of like put the puzzle together yourself. The first chapter is basically Nora waking up in hospital with no memory of what's happened. She's basically told that she's been in a car accident, but she has no memory of it at all. The story unfolds as she sort of fades in and out of this morphine haze. I remember being really enthralled by this book. I had no idea what the big twist was going to be because, you know, there's always a big twist. And it shocked me. It's really clever how the story sort of slowly unravels through Nora's own memory. It's just really well told. Again, I know people have mixed feelings on this, you either love it or hate it, but again, I just loved it. I just like this type of book. Also, Ruth Ware is just an incredible author. Like, she does this genre so well. She's brilliant. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. If you want psychological thriller, then this is the book for you. This is like the psychological thriller. It has its hype for a reason, and it's actually probably the reason why I love this genre so much. I mean, I'm pretty sure that everyone in the world has either read the book or seen the movie by now, but just in case you're one of the very few people who haven't, read this book and then watch the movie. They are both just fantastic, but read the book first. There's nothing quite like the thrill of a story as you're like turning the pages, but this is one of the really rare times when a movie really does live up to the book, so do both. But anyway, Gone Girl is a story of Nick and Amy Dunn. It's their 5th wedding anniversary when Amy suddenly goes missing. Nick arrives home to see the whole house overturned, so he reports it to the police, who find that Amy, this ever-doting wife, has left her annual treasure hunt for him, leading to his anniversary present. The police are convinced that Nick has murdered his wife, but he's insisting his innocence, of course. I don't want to say anything more than that in fear of ruining the plot, but the plot of this is just so ingenious. It's so clever, it's so well written. The twist in this made me audibly gasp. Like, this is the twist out of any book, any movie ever. Just everybody who reads it is like, okay, I did not see that coming. It's so good, which I think really speaks to the quality of the writing in this, because a lot of the time with this kind of genre, especially when you've read a lot, you really begin to like be able to guess what's going to happen, but with this one it's just so well written, you just don't see it coming. This is what made me fall in love with the genre, and I think this really set a precedent for books of this genre after this one. Like, everything just tries to live up to Gone Girl. It's so good, it's so good. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Now this is another recent read of mine and one that I absolutely raved about in my last books video. This is the story of Alicia Berenson, who's this woman with a seemingly perfect life. She's a famous painter married to this popular photographer, Gabriel. They have a very nice life, nice friends, are seemingly very happy. Until one evening, Alicia shoots Gabriel in the face 5 times and then refuses to ever say another word again. Nobody has a clue what happened, and she's shipped off to a psychiatric hospital where therapist after therapist fails to make any progress with her. Until criminal psychotherapist Theo Faber finds out there's a job opening at a hospital and he makes it his mission to make her speak. It just takes over his entire life. Never let yourself think you know what's going to happen throughout this book, because you're probably wrong. I could never have guessed the ending of this even if I tried. It's just a real page turner. Again, another one that I read really quickly. That's another one of my favourite things about this genre, because once you start reading you can't stop, and there's nothing I hate more than a book that you sort of like just dip in and out of. I want a book that I can sit and read for 6 hours straight, because if I find it boring I'm not going to continue. The Crossing Places by Ellie Griffiths. Now this is a suspense book with a bit of a difference, because it actually centres around a forensic archaeologist, a Dr. Ruth Galway, instead of the usual detective. This adds a really interesting, different perspective to this kind of genre. I've never read anything else like it. If you like history as well as crime, which I'm guessing is a decent percentage of my viewership, then you could find this book really, really interesting. So basically, Ruth happily lives alone in an area in Norfolk, in an area that was sacred to the people of the Iron Age. She just spends her days exploring the area, digging up ancient objects and occasionally digging up bones. But then one day Ruth gets a call for help when remains are found who the police believe may belong to a young girl called Lucy Downey, who went missing a decade beforehand. But because this is an area where a lot of like ancient bodies are buried, they need Ruth just to confirm, to tell if the bones are new or Iron Age. But then a second girl goes missing, and not only that, the detective chief inspector has been receiving taunts from Lucy's abductor for years. Can Ruth help them figure out what happened? I just really like this book. I think I particularly love the setting of this. It was set in the salt marshes of Norfolk, and the salt marshes were like a main character to the story. They bring a real sense of foreboding, which I think says a lot about how well this book was written. It's just something a little bit different, and it keeps you guessing until the end, and yeah, I liked it. As I did all these books, obviously, because these are my top 10 psychological thrillery books. And finally we have The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. I actually had to go on a hella search for this book when writing the script for this video, because I could remember the plot really clearly. I could remember how much I loved it, but I couldn't remember the title or the author for the life of me. And I'm very glad I found it, because now I can recommend it to you all, because it's so good. It's about Ted, who meets a woman called Lily on a night flight from London to Boston. They get to know each other, with Ted telling Lily about his dead-end marriage with a wife who he's sure is cheating on him. They eventually come to an agreement that Lily is going to help Ted to kill his wife, only of course Lily hasn't shared everything about her dark past. Even though there are some crazy twists in this story that probably wouldn't quite work in any other book, they're always somehow quite believable through the eyes of Lily, who's like the main narrator here. It's really weird to find yourself rooting so hard for a main character who's so like morally questionable, but I think that just shows us there's some really good writing. It's very rare you find a book that's written through the eye of the kind of villain of the story, or the like anti-hero, instead of the actual hero or the victim. I don't want to say any more than that about this book at the risk of some major spoilers, but it's just truly fantastic. They're my top 10 psychological thrillers / crimey books / mystery books / suspensey books. It's a very wide genre. Please leave in the comments down below your recommendations for this kind of genre. I want to read all the books. Make sure you check them all out. I'll leave links to them all in the description box down below, particularly Written in Blood. That is a book I never would have come across if it wasn't for the sponsorship of this video, which is why I love when like I get sponsored by books. It's just, I just love it so much. It fills me with so much joy, but also introduced me to books I probably never would have come across, so That's like my favourite thing. That is my favourite thing about like doing YouTube, just like getting book sponsorships. I just love it, it's so me. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you keep an eye out because in the next couple of months I am going to be doing a top 10 true crime books as well, non-fiction true crime books. I know loads of you have been wanting that as well. In all honesty, I just don't read as many true crime books. I just enjoy a bit of fiction, but that video will be coming up, don't you worry. I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.